You really thought you could take everything from me and get away with it? I whispered to myself as I stood at the threshold of the house that used to feel like ours. The storm outside had passed hours ago, leaving streets slick and reflective under the dim glow of streetlights. But inside, the weight of what had happened pressed down like the humid Texas summer. My name is Michael Anderson, and just this morning, Rebecca, my wife of 12 years, had served me notice that she was claiming the house, the one we both signed for, the one we poured our weekends, our savings, and our sweat into. She was grinning when she handed over the stack of papers, her eyes alight with what she probably thought was victory. I could feel the pulse in my temples, but I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam anything. I simply let the words sink in. The house, she said, is mine. Just like that, as if signing a couple of papers on a whim made the years of shared responsibility disappear. I walked slowly into the living room, the polished oak floors reflecting the chandelier above, and I let my eyes drift across the space, memorizing every corner, every scratch and dent, every framed memory hanging slightly off-center from moving furniture around 100 times. It was our life, she said, but apparently it was hers now. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the wind tapping against the windows, and for a moment, I let myself remember why we had built this house together, the way our hands had met over blueprints and paint swatches, the way we had argued about floor plans and then laughed about it over takeout boxes on the floor. That life didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore, or at least that's what she wanted me to believe. I poured myself a cup of coffee, strong, black, and let the steam warm my fingers as I thought. It wasn't the house itself that mattered. It was what the house represented: security, shared dreams, the quiet mornings and late nights of building something together. She thought she could erase all of that with a signature and a demand. She didn't know the one thing she had forgotten. I signed the mortgage, the papers that tied this property legally to my name, long before she had considered how to manipulate or control the situation. That small fact, buried in the legal stack she had ignored, was about to become my leverage. I sat at the kitchen island, scanning the documents she had left on the counter, my pen tapping lightly against my notebook as I reviewed every detail I could remember from the day we closed, the clauses she must have overlooked, the footnotes and fine print that would matter in the room that would decide everything. Outside, the world had returned to its normal rhythm, cars sliding past the curb, a neighbor walking a dog down the street, but inside, the calm before the storm settled around me. I breathed in slowly, counting to 10, letting my mind trace back over the months leading here. The small dismissals, the offhand comments, the growing distance. I had seen the signs, but this audacity, was something else entirely. The reality of it settled in, not with anger first, but with a quiet determination that was heavier than anything else. I had been wronged, yes, but I also had the power, the knowledge, and the facts on my side. I wouldn't react rashly. I wouldn't let the shock dictate my next moves. I let the calm carry me, the same calm that had seen me through late nights managing contracts, negotiating deals, and keeping the lights on. Because now, the stage was set. The papers she waved with triumph were only the beginning, and the truth, quietly resting in my folder, would speak louder than any shout, any accusation. I traced the edge of the mortgage document with my finger, recalling the exact moment I had signed it, the notary's pen scratching across the paper, the solemn words that had bound me to this home long before her declaration. That binding, simple yet unassailable, was my shield and my sword. The room felt smaller suddenly, every detail more vivid. The memory of shared breakfasts and Friday night dinners with takeout on the living room carpet playing like a muted film behind my eyes. I stood and walked to the front window, looking out over the quiet street, the night sky clear now, stars glinting faintly above. I knew what I had to do. Not yet. Confrontation, not yet vindication. First, patience, observation, and planning. The first move would be mine, and it would be precise, unassuming, and inevitable. Rebecca might have thought she had the upper hand, but she had forgotten who had built this life, who had put in the hours, the sweat, the attention to detail that made the house a home. She had overlooked the simple, unarguable fact: the signature on the mortgage was mine. And with that knowledge, with that quiet power, I felt the first spark of control return, the calm certainty that would guide me through the next hours, days, and the legal challenges ahead. I turned from the window back to the living room, coffee in hand, eyes scanning the space that had been our shared world, and whispered to myself once more, steady, measured, the hook of my own narrative. You really thought you could take everything from me and get away with it? Think again. Michael Anderson sat at the kitchen island, the early morning sunlight filtering through the blinds, casting narrow stripes of light across the countertop and onto the documents spread before him. The air was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner and the distant sound of a car passing outside. He took a deep breath and ran his fingers across the stack of papers, scanning the fine print and footnotes, each word a reminder of the hours he had spent studying contracts, mortgage terms, and legal statutes that governed property ownership. Rebecca had assumed that by submitting a few hastily prepared documents she could claim the house, but she had overlooked the meticulous record-keeping he had maintained, the signed mortgage and accompanying agreements that clearly stated his ownership. Michael closed his eyes for a moment, recalling the day they had signed the mortgage together, the notary confirming each signature, the exact phrasing that had tied the house legally to his name, a fact that would now serve as his anchor and leverage. He sipped his coffee, letting the warmth seep through him, steadying his nerves as he considered his next steps. He knew confrontation would come, but it had to be calculated, precise, without giving away any emotion that could be used against him. He recalled the small victories and setbacks of the past decade, the nights balancing budgets, the weekends fixing leaky faucets and painting rooms together, the shared dreams that had seemed so secure at the time. Every memory was a reminder of what the house had truly represented, not just wood and brick, but years of labor, commitment, and responsibility that could not be dismissed by a mere piece of paper or a declaration of entitlement. Michael began organizing his notes, highlighting key points and referencing the sections of the mortgage and property law that would be crucial in court. He thought through the sequence of events, the potential arguments Rebecca might present, and the evidence he would need to counter each claim. Outside, a neighbor walked by, waving, unaware of the tension unfolding within these walls. Michael felt a strange sense of calm as he prepared, a confidence rooted in the knowledge that facts, documentation, and patience were on his side. He remembered his father teaching him the importance of diligence and attention to detail, lessons that had guided him through countless challenges and would now be the foundation of his response. He set the coffee down and began drafting a timeline, noting the date the mortgage was signed, payments made, and correspondence exchanged. Each entry reinforced the reality that the house had always been his, legally and morally, and that Rebecca's claim was not only premature, but fundamentally flawed. Michael allowed himself a small smile, not of triumph, but of quiet resolve, recognizing that the situation, while challenging, was an opportunity to assert his rights calmly and strategically. He paced the kitchen for a moment, letting the rhythm of his movements clear his mind, then returned to the documents, his eyes scanning each page with renewed focus. He considered calling his attorney, but decided first to organize everything meticulously, knowing that preparation was his strongest weapon. The morning light grew brighter, illuminating the living room and highlighting the care he had put into maintaining the house, every surface, every corner, a testament to the life he had built and the effort he had invested. Michael felt the tension in his shoulders ease slightly as he visualized the steps ahead, presenting the documentation, calmly explaining the legal basis for his ownership, and allowing the facts to speak for themselves. He understood that the emotional component of the conflict could be powerful, but facts and evidence were immutable, and in the end, they would carry the day. He looked around once more, at the framed photos of family vacations and celebrations, at the small signs of daily life that Rebecca had perhaps overlooked, and felt a renewed sense of purpose. The house was more than property. It was a reflection of his diligence, commitment, and integrity. Michael sat back down, pen in hand, ready to annotate, highlight, and organize the evidence that would not only protect his home, but reaffirm the value of careful preparation, strategic patience, and steadfast resolve in the face of overconfidence and assumption. The quiet morning stretched on, and with every passing minute, he felt more anchored, more certain that when the time came, he would step forward not with anger, but with calm authority, letting the documentation and facts speak, confident that truth, clarity, and meticulous preparation would prevail. Michael Anderson spent the late morning organizing every scrap of evidence he could find, files stacked neatly by date, emails printed and annotated, mortgage papers highlighted with careful precision, each document a silent declaration of his diligence and ownership. The living room, once quiet and serene, now seemed like a command center, with the sunlight streaming through the blinds reflecting off the polished hardwood floors, illuminating the meticulous notes he had prepared for the inevitable discussion. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing slightly as he reviewed the sequence of events he would recount. The day they signed the mortgage, the joint decisions on repairs and renovations, the precise wording of the legal documents, and the payments he had maintained without fail over the years. Every detail mattered because he understood that the courtroom would respond to clarity, precision, and evidence far more than to emotion or argument. He sipped another cup of coffee, letting the warmth settle his mind, and recalled the subtle shifts in Rebecca's behavior over the past months. The way she had begun asserting dominance over decisions, questioning minor expenses, hinting at dissatisfaction, and now culminating in her bold claim of the house. Michael had observed all of it without confrontation, maintaining his composure, letting the evidence accumulate, and now that moment had come to the forefront. He considered his approach carefully, realizing that calm authority would be his strongest ally. Every word, every gesture, every reference to documentation had to be measured and deliberate. Outside, the neighborhood moved on in its ordinary rhythm, cars driving past, the distant sound of a lawn mower, birds calling in the trees, yet inside, the house held its own quiet tension, a reminder of what was at stake. Michael stood and walked to the window, looking out at the driveway and the familiar street beyond, letting his mind trace the steps that had led here. The nights balancing the family budget, the mornings reviewing mortgage statements, the weekends spent fixing leaky faucets and painting walls, all acts of care that had established his legal and practical claim. He turned back to the table and began annotating a new sheet, organizing arguments logically, referencing statutes and clauses that would make his position indisputable. He imagined the moment of confrontation, picturing Rebecca standing confidently, expecting victory, and he felt a controlled anticipation, the kind that comes from preparation and certainty. His pen moved steadily, underlining key dates, highlighting phrases in the mortgage documents, and drafting a clear timeline of ownership and responsibility. The quiet of the house allowed him to think, to plan, and to refine each step he would take, each point he would make, each piece of evidence he would present. As he worked, he reflected on the importance of patience and strategy, understanding that victory in situations like these rarely comes from immediate reaction, but from careful consideration and deliberate action. The sunlight shifted slightly, the warmth of the day filling the room, and Michael felt the subtle shift in his own confidence, knowing that he was no longer reacting to an immediate threat, but actively shaping the outcome through precision, preparation, and calm assertion of rights. Every photograph on the walls, every mark in the wood floors, every minor repair or adjustment he had made became not just a memory, but a testament to his commitment and a foundation for the argument he would present. Michael could almost hear the silent voice of logic guiding him, reminding him to remain calm, to speak clearly, to let the evidence carry his point, and to maintain the controlled composure that would make his case unassailable. He took a deep breath, letting the rhythm of his own heartbeat anchor him, each pulse reinforcing his focus and determination. The hours passed quietly, methodically, with him moving from document to document, verifying dates, cross-referencing statements, and rehearsing the points he would present. By the time the afternoon sunlight reached its peak, Michael felt prepared, anchored in the knowledge that the facts, the meticulous records, and his calm demeanor would provide a decisive foundation for the next steps, and that when the time came to confront the situation, he would do so not with haste or anger, but with measured authority, letting the weight of preparation and truth guide the outcome with certainty and clarity. The sun had moved lower in the sky, casting long golden streaks across the hardwood floors as Michael Anderson continued to organize his evidence with methodical precision. Each document he touched, every note he had written, every highlighted clause reminded him of the painstaking care he had put into the house over the years and the security he had always maintained. He leaned over the kitchen counter, tracing the lines of text on a mortgage statement, visualizing how each payment, each signed page, each acknowledgement of responsibility would play out when he presented them in the right sequence. Michael knew that timing and clarity were everything, that a single misstep could give the impression of uncertainty, and he refused to allow that to happen. He glanced around the room, his eyes settling on the framed photographs of family moments, birthdays, vacations, even small mundane mornings spent drinking coffee on the porch, and felt a surge of resolve. Those memories were more than just pictures. They were tangible reminders of the life he had built and maintained, a life grounded in responsibility, diligence, and care. Outside, the neighborhood was alive with activity. Children riding bicycles down the quiet street, neighbors tending to their lawns, yet inside the house, a calm intensity held sway, an invisible current that guided Michael's every movement as he prepared. He opened a fresh notebook and began drafting a narrative, a chronological account of ownership and responsibility that would be easy to follow and impossible to dispute. The pen moved steadily across the paper, guided by focus and determination, each word reinforcing his position, each detail connecting to the next in a chain of irrefutable logic. He reviewed emails and receipts, noting dates and amounts, highlighting any inconsistencies or oversights that could strengthen his case. Michael considered how Rebecca might respond, the assumptions she was making about the strength of her claim, and he allowed himself a quiet smile at the advantage he held in patience and preparation. He rehearsed mentally how he would present the information, the calm, authoritative tone he would maintain, the measured pace of speech that would command attention without appearing aggressive. As he organized the final set of documents into neat piles, he reflected on the importance of precision, the way small details could shift the balance in a legal dispute. Each document was a piece of the larger story, a story of diligence, foresight, and integrity that Rebecca had underestimated. He stood and walked to the living room window, looking out over the driveway and the quiet street beyond, the late afternoon sun warm on his face, and he let himself feel the weight of quiet confidence. This was not about confrontation, not yet. It was about preparation, understanding, and the careful orchestration of facts that could not be denied. Michael could almost hear the rhythm of his own heartbeat aligning with the sequence of steps he had planned, a cadence of readiness and assurance that would guide him through the unfolding events. He returned to the counter, pen in hand, and made the final annotations, underlining key dates and highlighting critical clauses, ensuring that every argument would be clear, direct, and impossible to misinterpret. The air was filled with the subtle sounds of domestic life, the faint ticking of a clock, the occasional hum of passing traffic outside. But in this space, focused and deliberate, Michael Anderson felt the convergence of calm, clarity, and strategic intent. He paused for a moment, letting the quiet settle over him, reaffirming his resolve to approach the situation not with haste, not with frustration, but with the disciplined, meticulous preparation that had always defined him. The evening light deepened, shadows stretching along the floors, and Michael knew that when the moment arrived, he would present his case with unwavering certainty, allowing the facts and the documentation to speak louder than emotion or assumption, confident that diligence, patience, and clarity would secure the outcome he had prepared for with such care. Michael Anderson rose from the kitchen island, stretching his shoulders and letting his gaze sweep across the familiar surroundings that had always felt like home. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the window blinds, casting soft golden patterns on the floors and walls, highlighting the subtle imperfections that spoke of years of shared effort and attention. He moved slowly through the living room, each step deliberate, as if the act of walking through the space was a way to reaffirm his claim, both practically and mentally. He paused at the family photographs on the wall, observing the faces frozen in time, recalling the laughter, the small victories, and even the quiet, routine moments that had knit the fabric of their shared life together. The realization settled deeper that while Rebecca might have believed she could claim the house with her assertive words and hastily prepared papers, she had overlooked the foundation of truth, responsibility, and documentation that Michael had meticulously maintained. He opened another file, sifting through mortgage statements, property tax receipts, and correspondence that clearly demonstrated his ownership, noting the consistency of payments and the absence of any evidence that would support her claim. The precision of these records was reassuring, a silent testament to his careful attention and preparation. Michael poured himself another cup of coffee, the warmth grounding him as he considered the next steps, reflecting on the importance of presenting the information clearly, logically, and without any trace of haste or emotion that might undermine his position. The quiet of the house allowed him to think, plan, and visualize the process of asserting his rights, understanding that clarity and composure would be more persuasive than confrontation or frustration. He began drafting a sequence of points, each step aligned to build a coherent, undeniable narrative that would leave no room for misinterpretation. He reviewed the timeline of ownership, payments, and responsibilities, organizing the documents so that the sequence would be obvious and compelling. Each annotation, highlight, and note reinforced the story of care, diligence, and legal correctness that he had cultivated over the years. As he moved through the house, he considered the perspective of a judge, the clarity required to ensure that the facts spoke for themselves, and the importance of maintaining a calm, authoritative presence throughout. The air outside was still warm with the remnants of the day, the faint sounds of neighbors and distant traffic a gentle backdrop to the focus and concentration within the home. Michael imagined the sequence of interactions that would unfold, rehearsing his measured explanations, the calm confidence with which he would present the documents, and the way he would allow the evidence to carry his argument without embellishment or excess. He paused at the window, looking out at the street, the cars passing, the trees rustling softly in the breeze, and felt a growing sense of control and readiness. The documents in his hands, the notes carefully organized, the chronological sequence of payments and signatures, and the meticulous attention to detail all combined to form an unassailable position. Michael returned to the table, pen in hand, reviewing and refining each point, making sure that the narrative he would present was complete, coherent, and precise. The quiet in the house was punctuated only by the faint hum of appliances, the rustle of papers, and the occasional call of a bird outside. In this calm, measured environment, Michael felt the weight of preparation, the power of patience, and the certainty that when the moment came, he would present his case with clarity, authority, and the unwavering confidence that truth, diligence, and careful planning would prevail, ensuring that the house, the product of years of labor and attention, remained rightfully in his possession, and that every action he took was grounded in both legality and integrity. By early evening, the house had grown still in a way Michael Anderson could feel in his bones. The kind of stillness that comes before a conversation nobody wants to have, when every clock tick sounds too loud and every shadow in the hallway looks like it is holding its breath. He had just finished placing the final documents into a black leather folder when headlights swept across the front windows. For 1 second, the room flashed white, and then the light slid away, leaving the walls dim again. Rebecca was home. Michael did not move right away. He listened to the engine shut off, the car door close, the sharp rhythm of her heels on the walkway. Years ago, that sound had meant dinner plans, grocery bags, or stories from her day. Now it sounded like a countdown. The front door opened, and she stepped inside wearing a cream blazer, dark jeans, and the confident expression of someone who believed the story had already ended in her favor. She looked at the papers on the kitchen island, then at Michael, and her smile came slow. "Still reading?" she asked. "I hope you are not wasting your whole day trying to fight something you cannot stop." Michael closed the folder with one quiet motion. No slam, no show, just the soft leather folding over the truth. "I had a few things to review," he said. His voice came out even, almost gentle, and that seemed to bother her more than anger would have. Rebecca set her purse on the counter and gave a small laugh through her nose. "Michael, please. This house is where I live. This is my life, too. You know how this will look. A judge is not going to throw me out just because you are upset." There it was, the old trick, taking his restraint and calling it weakness, taking her confidence and dressing it up as reality. He watched her carefully, not because he wanted to argue, but because he wanted to remember this moment exactly. The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and paper, the air conditioner pushed cool air along the tile, and somewhere outside, a dog barked twice and went silent. Michael rested one hand on the folder. I am not upset, he said. Not the way you think. Rebecca crossed her arms, and for the first time, something flickered in her face. Not fear. Not yet. Just the first tiny crack of uncertainty. She glanced again at the folder. What is that supposed to mean? Michael looked toward the breakfast nook, where sunlight used to fall across Sunday pancakes and unpaid bills and home improvement catalogs marked with sticky notes. He remembered standing in that same space 12 years earlier, promising himself that this house would be a place of peace. Back then, Rebecca had squeezed his arm at the closing office and whispered that they had finally made it. He had believed her. He had believed the smile, the excited plans, the way she kept repeating the word ours like it was a prayer. Now the word had changed shape in her mouth. Ours had become mine. Partnership had become leverage. Memory had become evidence. Michael turned back to her. It means you made one mistake, he said. You assumed I would react before I read. Rebecca's expression tightened. She walked to the refrigerator, opened it, then closed it without taking anything out. That small, unnecessary movement told him more than her words did. She was buying a second. She was trying to regain the rhythm of the room. You always do this, she said, voice sharper now. You make everything sound like a business meeting. This is our marriage, Michael. This is not one of your contracts. He almost smiled at the irony, but he did not. Because it was not funny. It was tragic in that quiet American way, the kind that happens behind nice front doors on clean suburban streets, where the lawn is trimmed, the mailbox is polished, and nobody driving by knows two people inside are dividing a life with legal paper and tired voices. You are right, he said. A marriage should not feel like a contract. But you turned it into one when you served me papers at my own kitchen counter. Rebecca looked away first. It was brief, only a second, but Michael saw it. He had spent too many years reading job bids, mortgage terms, inspection reports, and cautious smiles not to notice when someone stepped around the truth. She picked up her purse again, her fingers tight around the strap. My attorney says I have a strong claim, she said. I am sure he does, Michael answered. Based on what you told him. The room changed. It was subtle, but real. Rebecca's shoulders stiffened. Her eyes narrowed. She had expected pleading, anger, maybe a desperate speech about memories and fairness. She had not expected that. She had not expected the calm weight of a man who had spent the day building a timeline instead of breaking down. Michael slid the folder slightly closer to himself, not opening it yet. The gesture was small, but Rebecca watched it like it had made a sound. What did you find? She asked. Her voice had dropped now, lower and cautious. Michael held her gaze. Enough to know this will not go the way you planned. For the first time all day, silence belonged to him. It sat between them like a locked door. Rebecca's polished confidence did not disappear all at once. It drained slowly, the way daylight leaves a room after sunset. She tried to laugh again, but it came out thin. You are bluffing. Michael stood, picked up the folder, and walked past her toward the hallway. He could feel her eyes on his back. At the foot of the stairs, he stopped and turned just enough for her to hear every word clearly. Tomorrow morning, I am meeting my attorney. After that, we will let the documents speak. Then he went upstairs, not because he was running from the conversation, but because he had said exactly enough. Behind him, the kitchen stayed quiet. No sharp reply followed. No confident comeback. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft sound of Rebecca standing alone in the room she had been so sure was already hers. Morning arrived cold and colorless, the kind of gray Texas morning that makes every window look like a mirror. Michael Anderson had slept less than 3 hours, but when the alarm sounded at 6:15, he was already awake, staring at the ceiling while the house breathed around him. Downstairs, there had been no voices after he left the kitchen the night before. No apology. No argument. No sound of Rebecca walking up to explain herself. Just the quiet confirmation that something between them had finally moved beyond repair. He showered, shaved, and buttoned a navy dress shirt with the same calm care he used before important contract meetings. His hands did not shake. That surprised him. He expected anger to be waiting in the mirror, or grief, or some exhausted version of both. Instead, he saw a man who looked older than he had a week ago, but clearer, too, as if the fog had lifted and left only the road in front of him. The black leather folder sat on the dresser beside his watch and keys. He opened it once more, not because he doubted what was inside, but because he wanted the truth fresh in his mind. Mortgage documents, closing disclosure, property tax receipts, bank statements, emails from the loan officer, a copy of the original down payment transfer from his separate account, dated 12 years earlier. Each page was quiet. Each page was patient. Each page waited for the right room. When he came downstairs, Rebecca was sitting at the kitchen island in a white sweater, her hair pulled back, a cup of untouched tea in front of her. She looked tired, but not defeated. Not yet. Her phone lay face down beside her hand, and Michael noticed the faint blue light blinking from beneath it. Someone had been texting her early. Her attorney, maybe. A friend, maybe. Someone telling her what she wanted to hear. She watched him set the folder by the door. "You are really going through with this," she said. Michael took his keys from the small ceramic bowl by the entryway. "I said I was. You could still handle this privately." Her voice had softened, but it was not warmth. It was calculation wearing a sweater. "We do not have to make this ugly." Michael looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a moment he saw two versions of the same woman. The Rebecca who once stood barefoot in this kitchen laughing because he had burned scrambled eggs, and the Rebecca who had served him papers with a smile that did not reach her eyes. The space between those two women was where his marriage had disappeared. "You made it legal," he said. "Now I am answering legally." She looked down at the tea. "I only did what I had to do." That sentence landed softly, but it told him everything. People always say that when they want mercy for choices they made with both eyes open. Michael nodded once, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement, then stepped outside. The air smelled like wet pavement and cut grass. His truck sat in the driveway beneath a thin film of morning dew. As he drove through the subdivision, past two-story homes with American flags and basketball hoops over garage doors, he felt the strange split of ordinary life. A man jogged with earbuds in. A woman backed out of her driveway with a travel mug in hand. A school bus flashed yellow lights at the corner. The world did not pause because his life had cracked. It kept moving, indifferent and steady. His attorney's office was in a brick building near downtown, 3 floors above a coffee shop that smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon syrup. The receptionist greeted him by name and led him into a conference room with frosted glass walls, a long walnut table, and a view of traffic crawling along Main Street. Attorney Daniel Mercer walked in carrying a legal pad and wearing the expression of a man who preferred facts over drama. He was in his late 50s, silver hair, clear eyes, a steady handshake that did not try too hard. "Michael," he said, sitting across from him. "Show me what you have." Michael opened the folder. For the next 40 minutes, the room belonged to paper. Daniel read quietly, asking direct questions, marking tabs with a yellow pencil, occasionally leaning back when a detail mattered more than the rest. Michael explained the down payment, the mortgage signature, the monthly withdrawals from his personal account before the joint account was ever funded. The home equity line Rebecca had requested but never signed because the bank had required Michael as primary borrower. Daniel did not smile. He did not give false comfort. He only turned one page, then another, until the stack formed a shape Michael could almost see. Not hope, structure. Finally, Daniel placed both hands flat on the table. "Her claim is not impossible," he said, "but it is weaker than she thinks. Much weaker." Michael let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Daniel tapped the closing disclosure. "This is the center of it. And this transfer record matters. A lot. If her filing suggests equal financial contribution from the beginning, this document creates a problem for that story." Michael looked at the page. It was just numbers, a date, and a bank logo. But in that moment, it felt like a door unlocking. Daniel continued, calm and precise. "We are going to respond cleanly. No emotional language. No accusations we cannot prove. We will establish timeline, funding, liability, and intent. If she wants the house, she will have to walk through every one of these pages to explain why." Outside the window, a delivery truck hissed to a stop at the curb. Michael watched steam rise from a manhole cover and felt something settle inside him. Not victory. Not yet. But direction. Daniel slid a blank legal pad toward him. "Now tell me everything she said when she served you." Michael looked down at the empty lines, then back at the folder. He remembered Rebecca's smile. The way she had said the house was hers. The certainty in her voice. He picked up the pen, and for the first time since the papers landed on his counter, he felt the room tilt back toward balance. She said I could not stop it, Michael said. Daniel's pencil paused over the page. Good, he replied. Then let us show the court exactly why she was wrong. The response was filed 2 days later, clean and quiet, without a single word wasted. Daniel Mercer sent Michael a copy just after 8 in the morning, and Michael read it at the kitchen island while the coffee maker hissed behind him. The document did not shout. It did not accuse Rebecca of cruelty, selfishness, or betrayal. It did something better. It placed dates beside signatures. It placed bank records beside claims. It placed responsibility beside ownership until the story she had tried to tell started looking less like a truth and more like a curtain with sunlight cutting through the seams. Michael read every page twice. There was the original down payment from his separate account, the mortgage issued primarily under his name, the monthly payment history tied to his income, the repair invoices he had covered during years when Rebecca said she was saving for her consulting business. There were emails from the loan officer explaining why Michael had qualified a loan when Rebecca's credit profile had complicated the application. That detail had been buried so deep in memory that he almost forgot it, but paper remembered what people preferred to rewrite. At 10:30, Rebecca's attorney received the filing. At 11:15, Rebecca called. Michael let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then sent it to voicemail. He had a new rule now. No hallway arguments. No kitchen ambushes. No emotional debates that turned facts into fog. Daniel had said it clearly. From this point forward, written communication only, unless I am present. So Michael followed the rule. 10 minutes later, the first text came through. Are you serious right now? He stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then set the phone face down. Another buzz. Then another. This is unnecessary. We could have handled this like adults. Another buzz. You were trying to embarrass me. Michael almost laughed at that one, not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. People who gamble on your silence often call it cruelty when you finally keep records. He walked to the front window and looked out at the lawn, freshly trimmed, still carrying the faint tracks of the mower from Saturday morning. Across the street, Mr. Palmer was rolling his trash cans back from the curb, moving slowly in his old Dallas Cowboys sweatshirt. Ordinary life kept proving it had no interest in personal disasters. By noon, Rebecca came home early. Michael heard the garage door rise, the tires roll in, the engine stop. He was in the dining room, reviewing a spreadsheet Daniel had asked him to complete, when the interior door opened. Rebecca stepped in with her phone in one hand and her sunglasses pushed up into her hair. She looked composed, but the edges were off. Her lipstick was perfect, her posture straight. But her eyes moved too quickly, first to Michael, then to the papers, then back to his face. What did you send them? She asked. Michael did not look up right away. He finished entering the date on the spreadsheet, saved the file, and closed the laptop. My attorney sent a response. Do not do that, she said. Do not hide behind your attorney. He looked at her then. That is not hiding. That is how legal matters work. Her jaw tightened. For a second, he saw the Rebecca from company dinners and neighborhood parties, the one who could smile through anything, the one who knew how to make people think she was reasonable before they ever heard the other side. But this was not a dinner party. There was no audience to charm. Only documents on a dining room table and a man who had stopped volunteering for blame. She held up her phone. My attorney says your filing is aggressive. Michael nodded once. It is accurate. The word landed harder than he expected. Rebecca looked away toward the kitchen, where the afternoon light made the marble countertops glow. You are really going to drag every private detail of our finances into this. You filed to take the house, he said. The finances were always going to matter. She shook her head, and her voice softened, almost enough to sound wounded. I just wanted security. There it was again, the softer language after the sharp move. Michael had loved that voice once. He had trusted it. He had folded his own doubts beneath it, because marriage teaches you to give the benefit of the doubt until there is no benefit left and too much doubt too. Carrie. He stood slowly, keeping the dining chair from scraping the floor. Security is not the same as taking credit for what you did not carry. Rebecca's face changed. Not dramatically, just a small collapse around the eyes, like a porch light flickering in cold weather. You make it sound like I did nothing. No, Michael said. I am saying the record should show what each of us actually did. Silence stretched between them. The refrigerator hummed in the next room. A delivery truck passed outside, its brakes sighing at the corner. Rebecca looked at the stack of papers on the table, and Michael watched realization begin to move through her, slow and unwelcome. This was no longer about making him feel guilty enough to surrender. This was a paper trail now, a timeline, a legal map. She walked closer and reached toward the top page, but Michael placed one hand lightly over it. Not forceful, not dramatic, just enough. Please do not touch attorney work product. Her eyes lifted to his. For the first time, there was no polished confidence there. Only the first visible shape of fear, quiet and controlled, but real. Who are you? She whispered. The question should have hurt. Maybe a month earlier, it would have. Now it only clarified the truth. She had mistaken his patience for emptiness, his kindness for confusion, his silence for permission. Michael picked up the stack and placed it back into the folder. I am the man who finally read everything before signing away his life. Rebecca stepped back as if the words had changed the temperature in the room. Her phone buzzed again. She looked down, read the message, and her face lost another shade of certainty. Michael did not ask what it said. He did not need to. Somewhere across town, her attorney had likely found the same thing Daniel found. The claim looked strong only in conversation. On paper, it had problems. Real ones. Rebecca turned toward the stairs, then stopped with one hand on the railing. This is not over, she said, but the sentence no longer sounded like a threat. It sounded like a wish. Michael watched her go up, each step slower than the last. When her bedroom door closed, he returned to the dining room table, opened his laptop, and finished the spreadsheet. Payment dates, loan numbers, account sources, notes, facts. The kind of facts that do not care who smiles first. By sunset, the house was quiet again, but it was not the same silence as before. This silence had weight, direction, a low, steady pulse. Michael saved the file, attached it to an email for Daniel, and wrote one sentence in the message body. Here is the complete payment history. Then he pressed send and sat back as the last orange light slid across the floor, knowing the next room would not be the kitchen, and the next conversation would not be private. The next time Rebecca heard those facts, they would be spoken under fluorescent lights, in front of a judge, where confidence meant nothing unless paper could prove it. The morning of the hearing arrived crisp and clear, sunlight spilling across the streets in sharp lines and glinting off windshields as Michael Anderson parked his truck in front of the courthouse. He carried the black leather folder carefully on his lap during the short walk from the lot, each step measured, each breath steady. The city was waking up around him, joggers on the sidewalk, delivery trucks unloading packages, a neighbor walking a dog down the block, but Michael's attention remained focused entirely on the task ahead. The heavy oak doors of the courthouse opened with a dull creak as he stepped inside, the cool air of the lobby a relief against the warmth outside. He signed in at the front desk, showed his identification, and was directed to the courtroom. The long hall smelled faintly of polished wood and old carpet, the low hum of fluorescent lights overhead mingling with distant murmurs of other cases. Michael walked slowly, folder in hand, noting the weight of his preparation in contrast to the lightness of the documents themselves. He took his assigned seat at the plaintiff table, arranging the folder in front of him so that the top sheet displayed the mortgage statements and receipts he had so carefully annotated. His attorney, Daniel Mercer, arrived shortly after, nodding in quiet acknowledgement, carrying only a legal pad and a pen, ready to speak with precision. Michael took a deep breath and straightened in his chair, feeling the calm rhythm of his own heartbeat align with the strategy they had planned. The bailiff called the case, and Rebecca entered with her attorney, moving through the courtroom with a confident stride that had been practiced countless times in preparation for moments exactly like this. Her smile was polite, controlled, but Michael noticed the subtle shift in her posture as she recognized that he, too, was composed and ready. The judge entered, gown flowing slightly with each step, and the room settled into silence. Michael opened his folder, careful to keep his hands steady, and allowed his gaze to travel over the pages he had prepared. Each document was aligned with a specific point: dates of mortgage payments, copies of the original contract, records of down payment and subsequent renovations, the sequence of bank transfers that traced responsibility clearly back to him. When Daniel stood to present the case, he spoke with calm authority, referencing each document in turn, explaining the legal implications, the history of payments, and the evidence of ownership. Michael listened without interruption, noting the judge's subtle nods at certain details, the quick jotting of notes, and the steady focus that demonstrated attention to the truth of the matter rather than the emotion of the dispute. When Rebecca's attorney responded, the words were measured and professional, but Michael could see that the narrative she had hoped to present was faltering under the weight of the clear documentation. He remained seated, calm and collected, letting the facts speak. Every page he had annotated, every highlighted section, every chronological entry reinforced his position, and slowly, the balance in the room shifted. He could feel it in the quiet attention of the judge, the slight hesitation in Rebecca's glances, the subtle tightening of her hands on the counsel table. Michael's preparation and restraint created a presence far more powerful than any argument based on assumption or emotion could. He glanced at Daniel, who gave a subtle nod, and Michael returned his attention to the folder, tracing the lines of text one more time to ensure clarity and continuity. The hours passed methodically as each piece of evidence was presented, questions asked and answered precisely, objections raised and addressed succinctly. Michael's voice did not rise. It remained steady, measured, conveying confidence without a trace of defensiveness. By mid-afternoon, the judge leaned back slightly, scanning the documents and notes, eyes lifting to meet Michael's once, then down again to confirm facts with quiet authority. The courtroom was silent, not tense, but attentive, each word weighed against the evidence before it. Finally, the judge spoke, summarizing the documentation, highlighting the clear ownership, the recorded payments, and the properly signed mortgage, noting that the claim presented by Rebecca lacked legal foundation in light of the evidence. Michael exhaled slowly, the tension he had carried since the morning of the notice in his kitchen dissipating as reality aligned with preparation. Rebecca's expression shifted, a subtle acknowledgement that her expectation of victory had been misplaced. The judge's gavel fell, not with force, but as a punctuation mark to the process. Michael rose, closing the folder carefully, and felt the quiet satisfaction of order restored, of facts acknowledged, of years of effort validated. Outside, the sunlight continued to stream across the courthouse steps, and as he walked to his truck, Michael carried with him a sense of calm authority, the assurance that preparation, patience, and meticulous attention to detail had secured the outcome, the house firmly and rightly his, the narrative finally complete, and the quiet confidence of a man who had not only defended his property, but also upheld the integrity of his work and commitment.